Greetings, one and all. Steve the Amateur Historian. Hair's getting a little longer. Life's, well, about the same, and I am in the major hub of all these absolutely gorgeous historical apartment buildings, some of which may or may not have been hotels at one time. And I'm on, this is 19th, heading towards Burnside, right up here. And Burnside's super duper loud and busy, so I thought I'd start a little bit off the beaten path, because I have a fresh story here, a fresh historic murders of Portland. Alright, so for this one, we're going back to 1919, and this story is bonkers. It follows, to a degree, a certain element that has become kind of somewhat prevalent in this series as a whole, which is the idea of a man's fixation on a woman who presumably has no interest in him. And that brings us to the vicinity of 19th and Burnside, technically between 19th and 20th and Burnside. So my apologies right off the bat. Burnside is a very busy street, so there's a lot of traffic flying in and out of this area. But for this story, we're going back to April 25th, 1919. Specifically the evening of April 25th. And there was a guy named Amos B. Foster who, I mean, I don't know exactly how the guy's day has been going, but he decides to get himself jacked up on drugs, a little bit of booze, and he hits the streets, seemingly with an objective. I'm assuming the guy had an objective, and that objective in particular was to reach the Angela Hotel, which is this building right behind me. Very, let me just do that for you. There we go. So it's, since so many of these stories are really old, a lot of the places in relation to the stories I tell aren't still standing, but the Angela Hotel is still standing right here behind me. And this is where Amos B. Foster was heading the night of April 25th. Now there was a woman named Bessie Wilson, who Foster had met because she used to work in the hotel right here. By the time of April 25th, 1919, she'd actually changed jobs and wasn't working here anymore, but she was still living here at this hotel. And like any other kind of love story of that vein, Foster met her, became enamored of her. He would start showing up all the time with flowers and all that miscellaneous whatnot, trying to win her affections. She was never interested. She always rebuked him. And by this time in April, she'd relocated. She started working for a paper company, and she actually had become engaged to a guy that worked at the paper company. So you can guess by this point, Amos B. Foster is not a very happy camper, and it seems he's going to do something about it. But the thing is, this is not your run-of-the-mill, I can't have her, nobody can type of story. You'd think it would go that way, And even authorities believe the night of the 25th, when Foster started running towards the Angela Hotel here, that he was probably going to try to kill Bessie Wilson. Whatever his objective was, it wasn't going to pan out that way, because out of sheer luck, coincidence, on this night, Bessie Wilson was staying at the home of a friend, so she wasn't even at the hotel this night. Information that Foster likely didn't know. And coincidentally enough, this is likely how Foster came into such close proximity to Miss Nelson, who lived here, is he was part owner of a pharmacy called the Orlando Pharmacy at 20th and Burnside, which is right here. It may have even been inside this particular building. It looks like it's old enough. In fact, it looks like these buildings were probably built relatively the same time. They have the same kind of brick, same look to it. So the pharmacy may have been literally right here. I'm not sure. I just know it was at this intersection. Might even be where I'm standing right now. And I'm just gonna pop a squat in a parking space, so if somebody shows up to take this parking spot, I'm going to be very embarrassed, but I will vacate the area. So here's the activities that happen on April 25th when Amos B. Foster arrives at the Angela Hotel. I'll try to get it all out in one say. This is a lot of stuff happening. A lot of misinformation kind of went around. But the initial story kind of came as a result of an officer who was on the scene, an Officer Rainey, who was doing his beat up and down the street. This was actually Washington Street back then. It wasn't, the stretch wasn't Burnside. And I think Washington Street is just a little bit this way-ish. The roads kind of mashed together. And he was on his beat, and he was walking down the sidewalk, passing the hotel, and he noticed that the clerk, a Lawrence Goodell, was not in his place. And he found that kind of interesting and walked in just in time to see all hell breaking loose. And the presumption was that Foster was chasing Goodell down into the main kind of entry lobby area of the building when Officer Rainey showed up. But it later came out that it seems Foster got into the hotel and managed to make his way upstairs. And this is where officers think that he may have had an objective of killing Bessie Wilson. Is he apparently snuck in with a gun. He got up to the second or third floor. People who were staying there saw him with the gun and immediately, phoned down to the clerk. There's a guy in the building with a gun. And Lawrence Goodell goes upstairs to investigate, and ultimately, I want to say, Foster's coming down the stairs as Goodell is coming down the elevator, and they both came out right as Officer Rainey walked into the building. So the presumption was Rainey walked in while Foster was chasing Goodell, but it seems more like they just kind of exited into like the main lobby area at a relatively similar time. So at this point, Goodell was seemingly just searching for the guy that was meandering in the hotel with a gun. And it's really frightening, because one of the tragic things about this is Lawrence Goodell, it said in the newspapers he was partially paralyzed. He struggled to walk, he had mobility issues. So if he did encounter Foster with a gun and all of a sudden had to be like, oh crap, I have to run, he probably wouldn't have been able to get away. But now, Officer Rainey is obviously suspicious when he walks in the building, but he's probably not expecting to walk into a gun. So he walks in. Before he can react, Foster has his gun out. Goodell and Officer Rainey are at his mercy at this point. So one of the first things Foster tells Lawrence Goodell to do is to go up to Officer Rainey and take his gun away and to put it on a nearby counter. That way, Foster could come and grab the weapon, and now he has all the weapons. He has complete power over the situation. As the story goes, Goodell walks over to Officer Rainey, takes his revolver, And as he takes it to set it down on the counter, Foster shoots Lawrence Goodell dead in cold blood, right inside, you know, kind of the main lobby area of the hotel. It seemed kind of out of nowhere, but what authorities hypothesize is maybe Foster thought as Goodell grabbed the revolver that maybe he was going to try to sneak it to Rainey, and then Rainey would get a shot at Foster. So he panicked and shot Goodell. So Goodell fell dead. Officer Rainey is trying to make the best out of a really bad situation now. We already have a man dying on the floor in this building here. And he knows that there's a police box a little ways away, probably somewhere over in this area. And he asks Foster, who's, you know, again, got 2 guns now. He's hopped up on drugs and booze and whatnot. He's like, at least just let me go to the call box to call an ambulance. That was perfect timing. Call an ambulance for this guy who's dying on the floor in here. And so Foster begrudgingly agrees. So now I'm across the street from where I just was. I was literally sitting in this spot right here talking to you. So again, Foster begrudgingly agrees to let Officer Rainey go to this call box to get an ambulance, but of course he's going to go with them. So the 2 men exit the Hotel Angela from this covered entrance right over here with the little cover, and they start walking this way towards Burnside and 20th, so I can only assume the call box is right up here. And as they're walking this way, this is where things get absolutely insane. As they're coming up to 20th and Burnside here, there's a local, a guy named Edward Gerwig, who's walking along, and Foster, who's got a Portland, you know, police officer at gunpoint, accosts him, grabs this guy. And again, this is maybe the result of he's just killed a guy. Maybe, you know, his plans seem to be going astray. Again, you know, who knows what's going on in this guy's mind. But he grabs this Gerwig guy. You know, again, he's got 2 guns at this point. As they're coming to this intersection at 20th and Burnside, he actually gives Gerwig one of the guns and tells him, reaching the climax of my story, that's when the 20 has to come through. He hands Gerwig the gun and tells him, shoot me or I'm going to shoot you. And Gerwig, with blood and adrenaline and ice and who knows flowing through his veins, resists and resists and resists as much as he can. He's like, I'm not going to shoot you. The officer's here. He can't get to the call box because there's this chaos happening here. And finally, for whatever reason, Amos Foster says the hell with it, turns, I believe he gave Gerwig the officer's rifle and he turned his own gun. No, he gave Gerwig his gun, and then you had the officer's gun on him. Shoots himself in the chest. And as one of the stories would be reported, it like barely did any damage. It didn't even penetrate him. And so I want to say he made some comment about how, well, this officer's revolver is useless. Took his gun back from Gerwig and then shot himself 2 more times. Shot himself 3 times in the chest. Presumably right in this area. Fell. You think it's going to be a murder-suicide, but somehow, some way, Amos B. Foster survived 3 gunshot wounds, self-inflicted, to the chest at point-blank range. And so it's easy to think that perhaps, I think initially when people didn't really have all the details, to think that Foster shot Goodell because maybe he was having a fling with Bessie Wilson. He worked there, she lived there and worked there for a while. But as the story came out, it was more Goodell was just kind of a victim of the circumstances of the situation. There was nothing evidence-wise to suggest that they had any kind of relationship going on. And it was discovered in the aftermath. Fortunately, Bessie Wilson was not here. It seems like You know, if he was searching this building with a gun, it seems like he was trying to find Bessie Wilson to kill her. But it did come out later on that there were some letters, a couple of notes he wrote, kind of cryptic. One was left to the wife of S.A. Francis, who, those are the people that ran the Angela Hotel right back here. And it said, "Goodbye, Bessie. God bless you, little girl, and they can't prove one word they say, but it don't help my position any. Also for," and then he gave the initials HOA, which we can only assume is a person, but it seems authorities never figured out who that was. So there's this like, "Goodbye, I'm going away, Bessie" type letter, which kind of makes it sound kind of suspicious that he went here to kill her after writing this letter. Then again, maybe he wrote it and then later on hopped up on drugs and booze, changed his mind, and decided to go after her. But so yeah, again, this is from the morning before the murders occurred at night. And I think I paraphrased his letter slightly, but in essence, the letter, this last letter he left said, "They are persecuting me for religious causes. I will go, but some will go with me." That's some foreshadowing. "I am sorry it had to be here in your place," which again is probably foreshadowing, you know, it happened here. So this is also a letter left to, you know, the owners, proprietors of this place. "Brother Barr is a minor quality, but Bess was all the world," that meaning Bessie Wilson. "What I owe will be paid in full. Goodbye, Bessie. If you ever marry, get the other guy." So I'm guessing this Brother Barr, you know, there's no reference to who this Brother Barr guy is. Maybe this is that guy at her new job that she was going to marry. There's no reference to what that guy's name was, so I don't know. And then it says, "Get the other guy." It's so bizarre. There's like a third love interest in the mix. And this letter, which was written after the other one, almost implies, you know, "I love you, Bessie, but it's over for me and I'm going out," guns blazing apparently. Again, he could have changed his mind and shown up here, or maybe he thought he was going to encounter Bessie with this Brother Barr guy, whoever she was mixed up with that he didn't want her mixed up with, and he was going to take him out. Nobody knows who the other guy is. There apparently was another guy that Amos B. Foster liked more. Yeah, very bizarre, very cryptic, very telling, very foreshadowing. I don't know how soon it was this letter was actually found and seen to where people could react or be prepared for what this guy was maybe going to try to do, but yeah, these letters tell me that he didn't have the intent of killing Bessie Wilson. I don't know what the guy's intent was. Again, drugs and alcohol played a pretty big part in this story, but that is altogether, that is the circumstances that led to the killing of Lawrence Goodell in the lobby main area of the Angela Hotel right here between 19th and 20th on Burnside, which was Washington Street at the time. And so, fast forward, because somehow Amos B. Foster survived, you know, these slugs in his chest, and by September 1919, and you almost want to think this guy got off lucky. Again, you think I don't think he came there to kill Lawrence Goodell in cold blood. I don't think it would be a first-degree beef, but he got off with 1 year in prison on a manslaughter charge, and essentially the prosecution went that way with it because personally they felt that because of how chaotic and insane the whole situation was, that obviously his attorneys were going to try to get him an insanity plea, and it seemed pretty likely that they were going to get it with what happened here, even though I don't know how crazy this guy really was. This may have again been a lot more about the stuff he put in his system before just going out there. But he got off with 1 year for this whole thing. And one final little thing that I found on this situation was March 20th, so he's probably only got a couple more months in the pen. He had been transferred to a tuberculosis hospital, so I assume he caught tuberculosis, and he actually escaped the hospital and went on the lam, and it was almost a month before he was tracked down in El Paso, Texas, and I guess returned. So I don't know if they tacked more time onto the guy's sentence. I would assume so, for escaping. Maybe he blamed it on the tuberculosis as much as he'd want to blame insanity for the killing of Lawrence Goodell. Who knows? But that was one last little thing I saw in this case, that he went to a tuberculosis hospital and escaped. And this building is freaking gorgeous, by the way. Not to get distracted, but that's it. It was a doozy. There was a lot of information on this case, a lot of facets, a lot of things happening, a lot of things in the duder's head. And but that's it from, I think we're still in the, actually no, I'm in Goose Hollow now. We're kind of the northern fringe of Goose Hollow. I thought we still might be in like the Alphabet District or Nob Hill or something. I don't know, I'm confused. Actually, I think I'm not quite far enough. It doesn't matter. I'm in Goose Hollow, the sign says. The site, April 25th, 1919, the murder of Lawrence Goodell by Amos B. Foster, or manslaughter, you know, if you follow the court's decisions. And that's how it all came out here. Just a wild and crazy, absurd story. All that said, everybody, till next time, remember, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And hit up my Patreon if you want to help me financially, throw a few shekels my way. And yeah, all that said, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian, trying not to get run over, with another episode of Historic Murders of Portland. Catch you later.